What is up, ladies, gentlemen, everything in between, listeners of the Didn't Ask podcast? Welcome or welcome back. It doesn't really matter if this is your first or 44th podcast you're listening to because everybody is welcome and please do feel welcome. I hope you had a good week, had some entertaining stuff. For me, it was like a bad weekend just had. So I've been struggling with my bike, and I live in the Netherlands, as some of you may know. We in the Netherlands, we are a bike country. We go everywhere on bike. Doing grocery shoppings on bike. You name it. We go everywhere on the bike. So I've been having some bike issues. My bike chain got fucked up on Saturday, and then I fixed it on Sunday, and then my key to the lock broke, and that meant that I had to walk all the way from the store back home with the bike in my hand. And a bike is not that heavy, but it's just inconvenient. You know what I'm saying? It's just fucking annoying. But luckily, I made it home safely with not a lot of staring, but quite a few people staring at me thinking that I stole the bike, which I didn't, guys. I didn't. I wouldn't do that. But anyway, this is not a podcast where I talk to you about myself. No, 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 no. This is a podcast where I talk to you about the most popular questions from the Ask Reddit subreddit from the past week. So let's jump into the first question of the Ask Reddit subreddit for today, coming from user apart-scale. And they ask, what science fiction or fantasy show is worth watching? If you've been listening to this podcast for a little while, you might know that I use this website called Tracked. And this website called Tracked basically keeps track of everything that I'm watching. It'd be movies, it'd be TV shows. So right now, I'm just going through the TV shows that I have watched and basically giving a recommendation upon that. So while I'm scrolling, I'm already seeing the first thing that I can recommend, and that is The Witcher. I'm a big fan of The Witcher 3, the game, and I really was excited when I heard they were doing a Netflix show, especially when Henry Cavill was just like, hey, I want to be Geralt, because he's a nerd, just like I am. And it wouldn't be a better person to play that role, to be just like the biggest nerd. So I'm very excited for that. The first season was a bit back and forth in the sense that the way the show is set up is a bit strange and could lessen your enjoyment of the show. But the second season, they fixed those problems, which resulted in my opinion, in an even better season. So if I'm talking about science fiction or fantasy, that would certainly be on the list. Another show that would be on the list for me, I'm going to recommend three because otherwise we're going to be here all day. Another series that I would recommend is DC's Legends of Tomorrow. I have gone basically again back and forth with DC shows for a very long time. And DC shows are fun until they run for far too long. And that issue is what we are having with Flash right now. We are at this moment in the 8th season, which is absolutely outrageous to me. We don't need that many seasons, especially for the Flash that has very little interesting villains to play with. That's the thing that Batman has a surplus of interesting villains that he can fight. But Flash, most of them are just speedsters as well, and then more of the fucking whole season is you gotta run faster or you gotta outsmart, and to me it's just not fun. So Legends of Tomorrow is in the same universe, but it's basically all the secondary characters and characters that have shown up in the Arrowverse in some way or another, going on adventures, saving the sacred timeline, so to speak. And it's such a fun show. There have been over 100 episodes, so if you want to get into the show, you have a couple of episodes to catch up on. But it's such a fun show because they really just go all out. And there are episodes where I believe it was like the first or second season where it was basically the show was based around famous people being kidnapped or being killed off, so important events in history wouldn't happen. And there are episodes with George Lucas where Star Wars is never made and therefore the legends don't exist. And there is an episode where they save Obama in college or something like that. There are so many fun episodes, and to me, it's one of the most fun superhero shows that we have right now. And even though they're in their seventh season, I still look forward to the show every week because it's just so much fun to dive into those worlds and see how they give a twist on history and how they treat that. Now I'm looking further. Oh, yes, I'm gonna give this as a recommendation. The final recommendation that I will be giving you is Castlevania. Castlevania is based on a game, and it's in some ways similar to The Witcher, where it's very much high fantasy. Castlevania, if you know the game, you know that it's based around Dracula and his son Alucard, and the Belmont family that try to kill Dracula. And the TV show is so fucking good. It's a Netflix show, Netflix anime, and they don't hold any punches. It's brutal, it's visceral, it's visually stunning, it's everything on the box. It's fucking fantastic. So if you and they're also just four seasons, and like the episodes are, I believe, like half an hour each, maybe a little longer here and there. But yeah, fantastic. So if you really want to see a good TV show based in a fantasy world, go watch Castlevania. So going back to the question asked by user apart-skill, what science fiction or fantasy show is worth watching? So for me, it would be The Witcher, DC's Legends of Tomorrow, and then finally Castlevania. Thank you for your question. Moving on to the second question of today, coming from user MJKN01, and they ask, what is an addiction that the world is just okay with? Funnily enough, I'm gonna harp back on the previous question, and it's basically just our TV and just media consumption that is such an addiction to every one of us, but nobody really says anything about it because it's been normalized so much. And this is the thing that I've always kind of struggled with because I'm a gamer. Like, I have said that many a times on the show in the past, but when you game for a certain amount of hours a day, people are saying, like, oh, you have a gaming addiction. But if you spend the exact same time watching TV, nobody is going to call anything on that. And that's something that's really hard sometimes to understand, where there is just this weird divide. And we see this on many different fronts with gaming and other popular media. But it's so weird that if I watch a Netflix show, if I binge a Netflix show for 10 hours straight, that is totally fine. But when I play Fortnite for 10 hours straight, then all of a sudden that's an issue. And that is just not fair, in my opinion. It's just not fair to look at gaming like the weird stepchild while you're basically doing the same thing. And in some cases, even worse, because when you're gaming, you're at least doing something. You're in some way or another engaged with the product that you're quote unquote viewing. With TV watching or Netflix watching or whatever the fuck, you don't have that. You're just, stationary sitting in front of your TV watching that shit for hours, and nobody calls it anything else than just a pastime. TV watching is not even considered a hobby like gaming is. So that is kind of weird. So going back to the question asked by user MJKN01, what is an addiction that the world is just okay with? And I would just say like TV watching, or at least our media consumption. We are sitting in front of our TVs for hours up on end, and nobody, bats an eye. But when I do that while gaming, then all of a sudden I have a gaming addiction. It's a bit weird if you ask me. But thank you for your question anyways. Moving on to the third question of today, coming from user Juicy Siwa, and they ask, "Who is your celebrity crush?" And I think I have probably talked about this in the past in some way or another, but I couldn't find it in my sheets. So if it's not in my document, then I probably didn't talk about it fully. But if I have to pick one celebrity crush, I would have to say Charlotte Flair. Charlotte Flair is my favorite wrestler on planet Earth. I really fucking love her. She is gorgeous. She is like in the ring, she is very confident, but outside the ring, from the interviews I've heard and the moments I've seen of her outside the ring, she seems like a very like anxious person to a certain degree, but also just like a very personal person, which sounds fucking weird. But like she seems very personal. Like she seems pretty much down to earth, even though for some sort of reason she gets always shat on by wrestling media. But like I really, really like Charlotte. And from everything I've seen and heard and read, she seems like a very interesting person to be around, and she has gone through a lot. Not only, of course, being the son of a world famous wrestler, but just in general for what she has gone through with relationships and parents and brothers and, people dying. And she seems like a very interesting person. And because of that, I really, really have a crush on her. Another person that I really, really like is Brie Larson. For some sort of reason, I think Charlotte and Brie have some things in common where they seem kind of like, I don't want to say like dorky, but like they seem kind of dorky in a sense. They seem very much like the weird kid in class in certain moments, and just like very, I don't know how you say that. They seem very like, again, weird thing to say, but they seem very like personable. They seem very, very open and very, I don't know how to say that. Well, maybe if I know the word, I will come back to you. But I feel like both of them have something in common apart from being blonde, but that something in common that resonates with me. Going back to the question asked by user Juicy Siwa, who is your celebrity crush? And I would have to say it's Charlotte Flair. For sure, number one draft pick if it was up to me. And the second one would be Brie Larson. Because, man, she is so fucking gorgeous. And again, super cute. Both of them are cute in a sense, especially when you see them like outside. And Brie Larson, of course, huge gamer, or at least she loves the game, which I very much enjoy too. So, yeah, thank you for your question, Juicy Siwa. Moving on to the fourth question of today, coming from user Battle Express 2707, and they ask, "What is a video game you regret buying?" I am very much a person that doesn't regret buying many things. But there is one game that I fully regret buying, and that is The Sims 3 for the Xbox 360. I'm a huge Sims fan, and I feel like it basically started. I probably played Sims 1 on my PC back in the day, but my love for Sims basically arose with Sims 2 on PS2, I would say. Because The Sims 2 on PS2 was more, it felt more like an RPG instead of it being like a simulator game, because you actually had control over your sim and you weren't like clicking on things to be like, oh, do this, do that, do this, do that, but you were using the thumbsticks to move your sim through the house, which actually added a whole nother level to what Sims was. So with that, I really loved The Sims and started playing Sims 2 and Sims 3 on PC, and then Sims 3 came to console, and I was expecting basically Sims 2 again, and then better graphics and you name it. But then I got basically The Sims 3 that was on PC, but then worse. So at that point, I was just like, what the fuck is this? I'm getting The Sims 3. So instead of controlling your sim, you now are like a light beam because there is no mouse cursor. So you're a light beam playing the game. And then the most fun thing about Sims was that, or about Sims 3, I should say specifically, was that the whole city basically that you were in was one city. It was just one thing. The Sims 3 on console made it that they were neighborhoods, so to speak. So you would have one neighborhood where it's like you have your house and then a neighbor house and then maybe a pond or fishing pond basically in front of your house, something like that. That was one neighborhood. And then you had the next neighborhood which had some couple of houses and then maybe a restaurant and then all these things in neighborhoods. And that, to me, especially playing it, just made the game so much worse because now you're taking the flow out of the game. I cannot now go to a restaurant, eat, and then go home and do something else because I have to go to the restaurant, which meant that the game would load for some minutes, and then you eat at the restaurant, you come back, and then it would load again, and because it had to load in all those neighborhoods. And that was the thing that like I really hated about that game. And it is something that they kept in the games with Sims 4, which I fucking don't really understand why they did that. I think that probably they wanted to up the fidelity and therefore we're just like, okay, we're gonna do the neighborhood system. But to me, it sucks and I hate it. I don't want to use that shit. So going back to the question asked by Battle Express 2707, what is a video game you regret buying? And I would have to say The Sims 3 for Xbox. It wasn't what I expected it to be. And I legitimately played it for a couple of hours and then basically was just like, nope, this is not going to be it. Because it's The Sims 3, but then worse. Way worse. Even though, like, saying it's worse sounds like The Sims 3 is bad. And that's not what I meant to say, but like it's The Sims 3, but then yeah, it's like it's a bad version of The Sims 3. So thank you for your question, Battle Express. And now, moving on to the final question of today, asked by user Mystic_Rim, and they ask, "What is an app you will never touch, not even with a 10-foot pole?" For me, most of the apps that I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole even are the apps that you see advertised, and I don't know, like Gardenscapes and fucking Hero, whatever. All those games that have some booky ass commercial, but then are completely different games when you actually play them, they all suck. I don't even want to fucking talk about them. They all suck. And I wouldn't touch TikTok with a 10-foot pole either. Cause fuck that shit. I don't need that app on my fucking phone. So, going back to the question asked by user Mystic_Rim, what is an app you will never touch, not even with a 10-foot pole? And it will probably be all the games that get advertised on every fucking social media. You see them that show something that is not even in the game. Again, Gardenscapes, fucking Idle Heroes, fucking, I don't fucking know. I wouldn't touch any of those fucking games. But thank you for your question anyway, Mystic_Rim. And now we move on to the final question of today. Of course, coming from the Am I the Asshole subreddit from user Throw a Case 35456. And ladies and gentlemen, this is a long one, so please strap in, go for a walk, take this podcast with you. But here we go. Am I the asshole for calling the police on my fiancé? My fiancé, a 28 male, and I, 30 female, have been together for 3 years. I used to live close to work and use public transportation, but after I moved into his house, which is hours away from my work, I bought myself a car. Since I'm a nurse, and also since there isn't any hospitals close to where we live that I could transfer to. My fiance's car hasn't been working for close to 3 months now. It requires so much money to get it fixed, and he refused my financial help when I offered it. Instead, he would ask to use my car every now and then, and I agree as long as it wasn't when I'm working, and also since he only uses it for trips to the supermarket, etc. On New Year's Eve, he told me he wanted to use my car to go out with his friends and celebrate, but I declined because I had to cover a night shift and needed my car to travel to work. He insisted and even suggested I take the night off or swap shifts with another nurse, but I couldn't do that last minute. I thought he dropped it then, but when I went into the shower and got out, I couldn't find him, nor my car. I freaked out and started calling for half an hour, but he didn't answer me. I tried again till one of his friends picked up. I demanded he gave the phone to my fiancé, but he said they were out and confirmed that he took my car and told me that my fiancé said that it was better that I skip my shift and he'd be back later with my car. I couldn't take it. I felt so enraged. I had my fiancé on the phone telling him I did not consent for him to take my car to go hang out with his friends and said I'd call the police to get it back if he refused to come back with it. But he didn't take me seriously, so I ended up calling the police, and he and his friends were picked up at the bar where they were hanging out, then were taken to the police department. I got my car from there and still went to my shift. My fiancé was let go hours after I left, and he blew up my phone with missed calls and texts about how I was out of my mind to call the police on him and put him in this situation. I did not respond, but when I got off work the next day, we got into an argument, and he said he couldn't believe I'd do this to him, but I told him he made me do this, which he responded to that I was petty and callous because not only did I ruin his New Year's celebration, but all his friends aren't speaking to him after I put them in this situation as well, and he then kept giving me silence about it. I did consider this a form of theft, especially since he went behind my back after getting a no from me. But he was shocked that I even implied that he was a thief, and he said what's yours is mine and vice versa, so I shouldn't be using the term theft or stealing. Am I the asshole? Again, like I said, this was a very long question, but it does paint a picture very clearly, and the answer is no, you're not the asshole. You have to go to work, and that's a fair statement. You have to go to work. So, if your fiance doesn't understand you have to go to work, then he's just fucking stupid, and he knows that you have to travel quite a few hours to get to your work, so therefore, the car is the only option. For him, I don't really see that the car is the only option. I know that he's going out with friends, which on one side is also kind of fucking weird because why the fuck would you go out and take the car? Because you cannot drink, dude. And if you're going out with friends, maybe the friends have a car? Because if you're not drinking anyways because you're driving the car, then maybe they could like pick you up with the car so you can then bring them home later or something like that. And then he just takes an Uber home or whatever. Like the fact that your fiance went out with the boys and decided to steal your car, because that is essentially what he's doing. Because again, like you have said yourself, you said no to the borrowing of the car. So he is essentially stealing the car, even though it's like what's yours is mine. Technically, that is not true because of course, you are not married yet. So technically, you still have some separate things. But again, it's not about technicalities. This is what it's about what happens. You had to go to work, you had to be there on time, and the only way for you to get there on time was by using your car and then your boyfriend stole it. So I don't really see that there was anything else you could have done other than calling the police to be like, "Hey, my fiance stole my car and I really need it and he doesn't want to return it. So do something about that." Because again, I feel like your boyfriend or fiance is a fucking idiot because again, first off, he's stealing your car that you certainly need. And he then is going out with his friends, which means that he cannot even drink. So what's the point anyways at that point? And then thirdly, he's then giving you flack about this? Nah, dude. That's not gonna fly in my house. So, going back to your question, am I the asshole for calling the police on my fiance? Trora case 35456. You are clearly not the asshole. You did what you had to do, and that was call the police to get your car back because your boyfriend is an absolute fucking idiot that rather steals a car than call an Uber. So, thank you for your question, anyways, and please, please, please sort this out. And it might be a best thing to just leave. Leave him. Because that guy sounds like a fucking idiot. And that has been it for the Didn't Ask podcast for this week. I hope you had an awesome time listening to this podcast. And if you do, please leave a rating on Apple Podcasts. And if you do, I might read your question in the next episode after I see it. You can go to anchor.fm/didn't-ask-pod. On here, you can see all the platforms this podcast is streaming on, but also you will find a button that says message, and that will give you the ability to record a voice message with your personal question asking me. If you don't want your voice to be heard on the podcast, I can completely understand. First, say that upfront in your voice message, then I will just read your question out myself so your question can still be answered live on air. If you want to know what I'm watching in the next couple of days, that is totally possible by using Tracked. You have heard it earlier in the episode. Tracked is an amazing tool that basically keeps track of everything that you're watching, it be movies, TV shows, on multiple streaming services. It all works and it's great, so you can watch what I'm watching and ask me questions about those. So that will be it for me for this week. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Didn't Ask podcast, and if you do, I hope to see you back next week. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.